Joining me now is Stacey Abrams. She's an upcoming star, of course, in the Democratic Party, who ran to be governor of Georgia back in 2018 in an election that was filled with voter access issues. She has since dedicated herself to protecting elections, the right to vote, forming Fair Fight Action. It is great to have you on. Stacey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I've been thinking about this issue in two ways, and I thought there was no one better to think about it in these ways than you because of your experience in Georgia. There's an interview Greg Sargent of the Washington Post did with a lawyer for Joe Biden, Bob Bauer, today, basically saying that even the story itself about the possibility your vote might not get there or the fact there may be problems in counting the votes in time itself acts as a kind of form of suppression, that if you make people think the system is messed up, that it's not going to work, you take away people's incentive at the margins to participate. And I wonder how you think about messaging through that when that is clearly the president's aim in all this.
We absolutely confronted that in 2018, and our approach, we believe, worked, which is that you have to acknowledge the evidence of people's eyes, which is that they are watching their mail come in more slowly. They're waiting for their checks to arrive longer. They know there's a problem. And unfortunately, the president of the United States has taken credit for creating the problem. But the next step is to say, while there's a problem, there's also a solution. And the solutions are very basic. We need to make a plan to vote. In 42 states now, people can vote by mail with no excuses. That's up from 34 when the pandemic started. So we've actually been expanding access to the right to vote in the midst of this. So we need people to plan to start voting. Absentee balloting starts in September 4th in North Carolina. And you can apply for your absentee ballots in about 20 states right now. If you go to vote.org, you can find out when you can get your absentee ballot. But then we have to tell people that if that doesn't work, you have to have a fail-safe, a backup plan. That's early voting. And in 40 states, you have the right to vote early. So plan to vote by mail. And in case something goes wrong, have a backup plan to vote early. And then finally, we have to have a plan to show up at your polling place. And vote.org has an amazing website that can give you all of that information. But the bottom line is this. Voter suppression works not only when it prevents you from voting, but when it successfully discourages you. But we win when we acknowledge the problem and set out to defeat it. And the best way to defeat voter suppression is to overwhelm the polls with our presence.
You had experience, obviously, with precisely this sort of stacked deck, I think it's fair to say, in 2018. And what you just laid out is a kind of way of operationalizing how people move ahead of it. But there's a deeper kind of sense of democratic legitimacy here. I mean, do you feel that what was done in 2018 in Georgia with Governor Kemp, and it is now sort of part of the Republican playbook, the Trump campaign playbook, in terms of a kind of fundamental attack on democracy as a political tactic?
Absolutely. What Brian Kemp did in plain sight was what they'd been operationalizing for 20 years. He just decided to do it on steroids and in front of the cameras. And we watched the remnants of that play out again in June of 2020. But what we have to understand is that these aren't the only attacks. One of the reasons they're trying to delegitimize voting by mail is that they're trying to force people into early voting or voting on Election Day, because they also have a plan for 50,000 people to serve as poll intimidators, to show up at those polling places and do what worked so well in 1981 in New Jersey and what has worked over and over again through our history, which is scare people out of voting. And if you can disincentivize voting by mail and then terrorize people when trying to vote in person, you have the effect of preventing them from voting. And so we can't be distracted by the crisis. We have good leaders who are doing their work. Speaker Pelosi, Senator Gary Peters, we just heard from Senator Warren. They're doing the fight to save the right to vote by mail, but we can't allow them to delegitimize our faith in the process by allowing us to believe that they've already won. They haven't. They only win when we give up.
Stacey, it's so great to talk to you, so great to see you, and happy convention one day. My question to you is, I'm watching WNBA players become activists in this election, and they've been really out front in fighting against voter suppression and against the messages that Senator Kelly Loeffler has had. So Georgia WNBA players have been out front. And I'm also thinking about John Lewis passing. And I'm wondering if there is a different energy that you're seeing, because as you said, 2018, you saw a lot of that energy come in. But do you think that there is a different energy now because it seems so personal to so many people, particularly in your state?
Absolutely. We know that Kelly Loeffler, unfortunately, rather than responding to the disproportionate effect of COVID-19, instead of responding to the legitimate outcries based on the murders of Rayshard Brooks and Ahmaud Arbery, that she has instead decided to harass Black Lives Matter activists. But what's more important is that the WNBA is living out their history and their legacy of activism. They are speaking their truth because they know it actually matters. 2016 was one of those elections where we knew the consequences would be grave, but no one expected it to be this dystopian nightmare that we've been embedded in. And we know that now is the time to use our power to win. And I'm so proud of those WNBA players. I'm proud of being part of the legacy of John Lewis, that across the state of Georgia, we are doing our part to not only deliver our votes for Joe Biden in November, but to win the state and to win the future by saying that you will not steal our power and steal our voices in this election.
Stacey Abrams, it's always great to talk to you. And obviously this is right in your wheelhouse right now. And I think just you running through ways that people can think about how to plan their vote. I know NBC News is launching a feature just around that. Vote.org, as you mentioned, it's extremely helpful to have sort of tangible ways of people channeling their angst at this moment. Thank you very much. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.